On DeSantis of Florida.
Good morning, Mr. Secretary. Congress recently passed a trade authority bill that, among other provisions, instructed our trade negotiators to oppose any boycotts of Israel, including persons doing business in Israel or in Israel-controlled territories. And yet your spokesman recently said that the State Department rejects that provision and does not believe that Congress can conflate Israel with disputed territories. So my question is why won't the administration honor Congress's enactment?
Well, I'm not sure exactly what statement you're referring to or what happened with respect to that. I think we do honor legislation, but
so you would say your negotiators, if a European country was saying that they wanted to boycott people or businesses that are doing business over the Green Line, you think you would not fight against that?
We do not support any boycott efforts. We've been openly opposed to them. We oppose them at the UN. We're opposed to them elsewhere. We oppose labeling.
So you don't. Well, good. Well, maybe he was not.
That's why I said I don't know what the response is. That's
okay. Good, because I think that that's great. Well, the labeling, though, I'd like to follow up on that because your spokesman, Mr. Kerry, said that the U.S. doesn't oppose labeling of Israeli products from the disputed territories and says State Department does not view labeling as a boycott of Israel. And the problem with that is, once you go down the road of doing the labeling, that's really a precondition for countries to be able to boycott Israel. So he suggested that the State Department is not opposed to European efforts to require Israel to label goods that are outside of the Green Line. Are you saying that that's not the position?
We don't view, no, that kind of labeling actually, I mean, we require labeling of where people send goods from. We require labeling of goods.
But if someone sends it from a Jewish community outside of the Green Line and they say made in Israel, the State Department's position per him would be like it would be fine to force them to say that that was produced in the West Bank.
Yeah, labeling it from the West Bank is not equivalent of a boycott.
But it sets the precondition
it's equivalent
for a boycott.
Of knowledge to people so that they can, have information about where products come from. Which
but I think it sets
we require also, by the way. We have Made in America.
But these are disputed territories, and you have Jewish communities there where they're producing goods and they label it as
made
in Israel.
Which is why we are opposed. We are opposed to any boycotts or any efforts to isolate Israel based on where something. We're opposed to that.
Well, good. Well, I think I appreciate you saying that forthrightly because I think we've been getting mixed signals from the State Department. In terms of funding, there was over the last several years about $1 million has gone to this New Israel Fund, and that's an organization that supports BDS. Do you think it's appropriate that money that the State Department is dispensing in grants be used for organizations that support BDS?
I'm not familiar with that. It's news to me, and I'll take it under advisement and review it.
We'll get that. There's a movement to boycott Israel on a lot of college campuses in the United States. Do you view that as helpful for Americans' diplomatic relations with Israel and other nations in the world? And do you think it's appropriate that U.S. taxpayers are funding universities that take an official position in favor of BDS?
I believe in academic freedom. I believe in student freedom to take positions. It's a time-honored tradition in the United States of America that we don't punish positions people take at any.
What about an institutional position? Obviously,
we, as a government, make our position clear that we do not believe it is helpful to be boycotting, but people have the right in America, thank God, to be able to make their own decisions, and we as a government do not punish students for the position.
Well, I don't think it would be punishing students. I think it would be if a university adopted an official position that they were going to boycott Israel, we would want to subsidize that with taxpayer dollars.
I also, that's obviously a debate for Congress, but I would not advocate or support any challenge to the freedom of the university to make its own decisions, and I think punishing them would be inappropriate.
Now, money that goes to the Palestinian Authority directly under federal law requires the State Department to certify that the Palestinian Authority is acting to counter incitement of violence against the Israelis, and I've noticed that the last several years the State Department has not made that certification. Is that correct?
I wasn't aware we hadn't certified the last couple of years, but we are following constantly the incitement issue. I just met with President Abbas and raised the issue with him a couple of weeks ago, and we are working through our relationships and constant engagement on the West Bank to make sure that the incitement is not taking place in any official ways.
I think the worry is that the certification has not been made, so that would prohibit funds directly, but the State Department has been directing funds to the Israelis down the Palestinian debts, and the question is that trying to get around the spirit of the law?
No, it's trying to sustain the one entity in the West Bank that is committed to peaceful resolution and to nonviolence and to a two-state solution. The fact is that there are many, many difficulties financially in the PA's ability to be able to meet its needs for education, for health, for the standard process of trying to govern the West Bank. And these have been particularly difficult last year and a half or so, as you know, with the violence that has risen. We condemn the violence completely. I might add, I was extremely disturbed to read today that Iran has agreed to pay the families of people who've engaged in violence and people who have been, quote, the martyrs of the violence that's taken place. That is completely inappropriate and seems to lend some sort of credibility to that violence and to those choices. And I think it's the wrong choice by Iran. And we strongly urge any kind of incitement of any kind, and that even in its own way can be a form of incitement, that you're going to have eternal support and the families will be fine and this is okay behavior. It's not okay behavior. But President Abbas is committed to nonviolence. He's the one leader in the West Bank who has consistently, even in the middle of the violence, even in the middle of the Gaza war previously, condemned violence as a means of trying to achieve the two states. So we believe that trying to build the Palestinian Authority and give them greater capacity to be able to control their own security, be able to build their capacity, is the way to ultimately move towards solving the problem.